Hi there guys, it's Jack, and we are going to dig into our modal work today by starting off with the very first mode, which is the Ionian Mode. Now the Ionian Mode is the easiest mode to deal with because it's really just the same thing as saying a major scale. So Ionian is just another name for a regular old major scale. So, we can see these scales on the guitar a few different ways. We have single string playing and we have position playing. For theory, just to understand something and see the patterns, sometimes the single string is a little bit easier. So for example, if we found our first fret C on the B string, the second string, right? And we follow that pattern that we know, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, we'll be mapping out a C scale and a C Ionian scale. And we can really see it on the single string. We can see, 2 frets up for the whole step to D, 2 frets up for the whole step to E, a half step, 1 fret for F, 2 frets up for G, 2 for A, a whole step up, or 2 frets for B, and a half step for C. And you can hear that just sounds like that regular old do, re, mi sound. So that kind of single string work is great for theory because we can really visualize what's happening when we play across one string, because we can see when it's 2 frets or 1 fret rather. So that's one way to play the scale. It's maybe not the most useful for soloing, at least not in the beginning stages. So we also, of course, want to learn our position. And in your book, in your PDF book, we have a couple pages of modal overview, and then after that we jump right into the major 1 Ionian pattern, right? So the way we're going to work on it, and that's on page 4 in your mode book. So we're going to start here on the 8th fret because that's a C. We're going to use our second finger and we're going to get that scale shape down first. Without the scale shape, it's hard to go much further. So a lot of you guys probably already know this shape, but we're going to just kind of review it, and then we're going to add a little extra to what you maybe are not as comfortable with. So the scale pattern is 2-4. 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 2, 4, 1, 2, and then you can go up to the 4 if you want to because it's there, and then backwards 4, 2, 1, 4, 2, 4, 3, 1, 4, 3, 1, 4, 2, 1, 4, 2. Awesome. So the first thing you have to do is memorize that pattern. So if you don't have the pattern down, it's hard to go any further. So if you don't have it super solid in your muscle memory, you can go ahead and just pause the video and work on it until you have it. The 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4. Okay, so now once you actually have gotten the scale shape down, the next thing you want to do is make sure that you actually say the note names. And this is a step that so many people skip and they think they don't need it and I'll just use my ear. But the further you go down the road, you want to start working on more advanced soloing ideas, changing scales, playing notes that come out of the chord that's currently going by. But all those things become very difficult if you don't actually know what notes you're playing. And most people, like I said, they skip this step, so you shouldn't, okay? So we're gonna play the scale again, but this time, instead of just working on the shape, you're gonna go ahead and say the note names. And it's just C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then it loops, right? So here we go. So we got C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, C. You can go up to the D if you want to. D, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C. So again, you can pause the video and work that a bunch of times. Now, you may notice that when you go backwards, it's harder to say the letters than when you go forwards. Of course, that's because you learn the alphabet forwards and not backwards. So you're going to want to go ahead and learn to be able to say G, F, E, D, C, B, A, or C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C. So that it's just as easy to think backwards through that limited part of the alphabet, our musical alphabet, as it is to go forwards. So you want to be able to eventually just go C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, C, B, A, G, F, E, and just have no problems just saying it in either direction. Okay? And don't skip that step. It's super important. All right, so moving on. Now that we know what Ionian is, it's just basically a major scale. We know a great scale position for it, starting on the one of our scale. We know the scale shape, we know the notes that we're playing. So when do we use it? Well, we're going to look at a chord progression. And the chord progression is in your book of your Modal PDF document. And we just have a couple chords here. C major 7, C major 7 again, and then up to an F major 7. And then it just loops. You know, so when we see a chord progression, one of the skills we're going to build throughout our courses is before we even start playing around on the guitar, looking for things by ear, we're going to get to the point where we just see a chord progression and we just understand what's going on before we even start playing. And boy, that saves a lot of time because you can immediately go for some soloing ideas or creating parts because you already know what to do. You already know what's happening. So when we look at these chords, we only have two. We have a C major 7 and an F major 7. So our jam has to be rooted in one of those two chords, or almost certainly it has to be. So of the two, well, we had the C first, and that matters. That's called metrical placement. When you start with a chord progression, or start with a chord in a chord progression, you end with a chord in a chord progression. Those are two big clues that that's your main chord. Okay, so that leans towards C. Okay. Another thing that leans towards C is the fact that if we were in F, well, the key of F has a single flat, B flat. And again, we want to work through our theory modules so that we kind of know the key signatures for all our major keys. That's a really good basic skill to have, just understanding your basic keys. So if we were in F major, we probably wouldn't have a C major 7 because that's got a B in it, right? We'd have a C dominant 7, which has a B flat in it, like the key signature for F. So that's another argument for putting us into the key of C. Okay? So when we see these two chords going by and we say to ourselves, okay, we start with C, there's only two chords. In any major scale, it's the 1 chord and the 4 chord that are your major 7 chords. So you know, while we could be in some weird mode, all the evidence is pointing towards C. The fact that these are really kind of full chords, including the major 7s, so your C chord has C, E, G, B, whoops, slightly out of tune, and your F chord has F, A, C, E. Well, those are pretty complex chords, and when you put them together, there's like almost all the notes of a full C major scale or C Ionian scale. So yeah, we could play a blues scale with that, but it's kind of suggesting we go for that full scale. So that's what we're going to work on. Before you do your soloing, you want to actually play the chords, because you always want to play a chord progression before you solo over it, because you need to hear the chord progression, you need to feel the chord progression, and that's going to help your ear. So people, a lot of times they want to rely on their ear before they know what they're doing, okay? But if you learn to understand what you're doing, it's not a replacement for your ear, it supplements your ear, and then in fact at a certain point it improves your ear, because you'll start playing with things consciously, putting things together, and then your ear is forever going to be tuned into those ideas. So it's not that we're saying using your ear is bad, right? But we are saying if you know what you're doing, it can't hurt. It's only going to help you, right? So you can either play these chords 5th string major 7 shapes on the 3rd and the 8th fret, or you could just play the open position, really easy. If you have a C chord, you just pick up your 1, you have C major 7. If you play like an F chord, like this kind of open position version with a mini bar, 2, 3, and you just pick up your bar so that you just have F, A, and C, and an open E on top, you have an F major 7. So however you want to do it. You want to get really, really comfortable playing the chord progression, okay? All right, so once you've learn the chord progression, you've learned the scale, you're going to go ahead and put it together. Okay, and this is where your backing tracks are going to come in. So we have 2 backing tracks associated with this Ionian lesson. The first one is, you have just a backing track. Here you have it. And then it goes to the F. So that's just a little sample of what it's going to sound like when you start playing over your track. Okay, there's also a sample solo track as well, where it's just the same thing as that backing track I created for you, but it also has me just doing a little solo sample in there. Okay, so that's all you really need from this lesson. You just want to pause the video at all the different stages to make sure everything is working really solidly for you, right? You got the scale shape memorized. Boom. You know the note names, right? You understand the theory of what a Ionian mode is, just a major scale. We saw a couple chords. Understanding, why these chords are in this mode or this key or that key, I totally get that's kind of a process, and we'll just kind of work on it together. But again, I urge you to make sure you work through the theory module. I know that's kind of like the tough part because it's a little less exciting. It's a little bit more kind of book work, but you got to do it because you just want to know basic major scales and minor scales, because then when you start doing more advanced playing, it's not confusing. It's not going to throw you for a loop. It's not going to be your limiting factor. You're going to understand what you're doing, and that's only going to help you, right? But in the meantime, if you're kind of working on that in conjunction with your modes, then I, of course, will walk you through it and explain what's going on. So that is it. Oh, bonus round. Okay, so when I played, right, here's another great argument for knowing what notes are in your scale shape and also knowing the theory of what notes are in your chord. If this is a C major 7 with C, E, G, B, well, I can map those notes out of my shape. Here's a C, here's an E, here's a G, here's a B. Here's a C, here's an E, here's a G, here's a B. That's called an arpeggio. Now this is extra credit, mind you. The main thing you want to be able to do is just, learn the scale shape, learn the notes, and kind of goof around, have fun playing the scale. But if you want to work some things out, work out little parts to intersperse with your full-on improv, right? Then you got to know a little extra. So what I was doing, I created a little theme you might have heard. Or up here. And that's just the notes from the chord. C, E, and then I reversed the order here. B, G, or up higher. C, E, B, G, right? And then for the F chord, I did the same thing. I mapped out the chord out of the scale shape. So nothing's leaving the scale shape here. F, A, C, and E. And I just reversed the last two notes. F, A, E, C. So that's a cool way to take your playing to a higher level. You've mapped out a little part. It doesn't mean that's the only thing you're going to play. It doesn't mean that there's not improvisatory sections to your solo. It means you have something to fall back on and something that will give more structure to your playing, because it's going to be a theme that listeners hear and kind of can grab onto. It's more of a memorable melody, right? So anyways, if you do something like and then you get another measure, just goofing around there. So you can kind of go back and forth, theme, improv. That's all extra credit because, it's a little bit more challenging. You have to really kind of map some things out. But for those of you who are up for that, I highly recommend doing that kind of work as well, okay? But again, that's extra credit. Mostly we just want to understand the scale shape, understand what notes we're playing, don't skip that step, right? And then have some fun improvising over our chords. All right, so that's our Ionian jam. That's our first jam in Ionian. We're actually going to do 2 for Ionian. So let's go ahead and check out the next video to go ahead and start working on our second Ionian jam. All right, thanks.